Premed office hours for February 19th, 2025. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your amazing MC slash host slash all around cool guy. Today, I am the founder of Medical School Headquarters Mapped, author of the Premed Playbook series, host of the Premed Years podcast and Premed Office Hours. I'm joined by not one, but two amazing dudes, the only dudes on our team. Actually, we have Petros now. We got another dude on our team.
Yay! We got another dude. Yay!
Anyway, joining me today, Carlos Tapia, former director of student affairs at Icon School of Medicine, former director of admissions at TCU. I see you, Carlos. How are you?
I'm good. Trying to stay warm. Maybe we should host Premed office hours with Petros. That'd be fun. Bring him on.
Yeah, we definitely
toss them into the mix.
Right? Bring him, and we'll talk about Petros here in a second. Definitely want to bring him. Reverend Dr. James Scott Wright, former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, retired executive director at TMDSAS. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I, like Carlos, am trying to stay warm, and because here in Texas it's freezing cold. So anyway, yeah. I'm good though. Yes. Thank you.
There we go. All right. For those of you joining us, whether on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, we are here for the next 50 minutes or so answering your questions for free. So chat away. Let me talk about Petros here for a second. For the last several months, I've been working kind of behind the scenes, looking at starting MCAT tutoring here at Medical School Headquarters, something that I never really wanted to get into. I hate test prep. I hate the MCAT. But I also said I'd never build a team of advisors, and here we are. So basically, just take whatever I say I'd never want to do, and eventually I will get there. But we just started with Petros this week. He is actively reaching out to tutors that are already kind of raising their hands, saying they're interested in tutoring with us at Medical School Headquarters. So if you are someone who has taken the MCAT, I have two kind of options for you. If you've taken the MCAT and you think you'd be a great tutor, go to mcatbymshq.com/tutor. Let me throw up a little banner. I will do this one, mcatbymshq.com/tutor. So if you go there, that will bring you to a form that you can fill out that says, hey, you're interested in being a tutor. But we also will start tutoring for basic sciences as well. So if you haven't taken the MCAT and you crushed OChem or Biochem or Gen Chem or Gen Bio, and you want to potentially be a tutor for those topics, we are actively looking for those as well. So mcatbymshq.com/tutor is the place to go for all of that. And if you are interested in being tutored and you want to have one of our amazing new tutors tutor you, you can go to mcatbymshq.com/student and fill out that interest form. So go check those out. Super excited to start offering those services. Krista says, hello to all. What is the cost of an MCAT tutoring? We don't have any costs set up yet, but I expect it to be very competitive compared to all of the big services out there, because we're a small team. We're not like the big box purple company out there is a public company, right? They are out there to make money for their shareholders, and that is not us. So yeah, we'll do good. Even that other company that I used to talk a lot about, the company that shall not be named, they are beholden to private equity, and they are going through lots of changes, which was one of the reasons I started exploring going out into test prep on my own. So super excited about it. When should I register for April 2026 MCAT dates? Those registration dates open in October 2025 for that. FC, is it possible to get accepted to DO schools without DO shadowing? Scott, what do you think? Can you be accepted to a DO school without DO shadowing?
I would say yes. Shadowing is difficult to get in general anyway. And I think that DO schools, probably would prefer that you have DO shadowing, at least some contact with DOs, so what DOs are all about and stuff like that. So I would guess that they would prefer that, but I would say it is possible. Now the question becomes, is it probable? I don't know. That's a good question. But I would say yes, it is possible.
Yeah, I'll answer this one too, because I've had several conversations with people from ACOMIS or ACOM. Let me know, like, hey, we aren't just looking for people that have shadowed DOs. It's a kind of this big myth out there that you have to shadow a DO. There was one school, ARCOM, Arkansas College of Osteopathic Medicine, I believe. They were the kind of the lone holdout for requiring a DO letter of recommendation. That is no longer the case as of a year or two ago. And while some schools may recommend or strongly prefer a DO letter, nobody requires one anymore. And so, yeah, don't need it. Get out there. And then the opposite is true as well, which always comes up is, well, what if I have a DO letter of recommendation? Can I apply to MD schools with it? The answer is yes. You can use that letter anyway. Angeli, do you think it is possible to study for the MCAT while in AIT 68, waiting for the Army National Guard? No idea. Only you will know. I don't know. Advanced individual training, type of career training for new soldiers in the U.S. Army. Is that boot camp? It's like military specific training. Yeah, it depends. Angeli, what you can do.
Time commitment.
Yeah. And who are you as a person? Like, can you do it? Some students might be able to. Is last minute DO shadowing looked down on, like only shadowing 2 to 3 months before applying? Dawa's asking that question. Carlos, this comes up all the time with any activities, like last minute, started right before the application, and it's kind of the first time they're doing something, whether it's clinical or shadowing or something else. Yeah. What potentially can be the meaning made from that?
Yeah, it's a yes and no. I think it's a maybe. It depends on how much time you dedicated within those 2 to 3 months. I think the question that comes to mind on the committed side is like, why are you waiting until 2 to 3 months before applying to start this activity? It's always recommended that you engage in activities for the long run, meaning that you've been working towards the application towards medical school since you started undergrad. And so that's one of the questions that would come up is like, why now? Is it just a quick pivot, quick interest? You realize you had a gap, so now you're trying to fill the time. It also brings up how much time can you actually dedicate to this experience in 2 to 3 months? As Dr. Wright mentioned, it's very difficult to get shadowing experiences. And I would assume that even, within those 2 to 3 months, you're probably only shadowing maybe 40 hours on average for those 2 to 3 months, because I've seen this play out where some doctor will only give you 8 hours for the month, another will give you 8 hours. So it's just going to depend. It's not encouraged, but you have to do what you have to do to get those hours up, and it's understandable. Just be ready for the questions that come.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. A question from Instagram. Does scribing for a PA count for clinical? Yes, it does. That is scribing. So whether you're scribing for a PA, an NP, an MD, DO, you're getting that clinical experience. Question, another one from King Girl. What is my chance to get into medical school with a 3.0 GPA? I love answering this question with another question. What is the story behind that 3.0? Are you on an upward trend where you had 2.0s your first 2 years and 4.0s your last 2 years? Or the opposite, where you had 4.0s and now you're 2.0s? Or have you been a 3.0 student all along? So lots more data and information needed there to determine your ability to get in, or at least start to think about that. Krista, when is the next Am I Ready session? I have a decent portfolio, but there are gaps that'll help me know if I'll be ready to apply next year or if I need a gap year. Yeah, we don't have any on the books, some Am I Ready sessions. We should get some more on the books for those. We also do Am I Ready kind of advising sessions as well. You can check those out. Faison, can shadowing different specialties make up for limited clinical experience? I work as an MA at a cardiology clinic and will have lots of hours by the time I apply, but I'm concerned about diversity. It's interesting, Scott. It looks like the student's asking kind of two different questions. One is, hey, I have good clinical experience, but it's only one clinical experience. And do I need lots of different clinical experiences, or is shadowing multiple specialties okay since I'm only MAing for one specialty?
Yeah, I think that, I'll go back to my differentiation between optimal, acceptable, and unacceptable. So I think having no clinical experience and no shadowing is unacceptable. Let's just say that from the get-go. Now, is it acceptable to have, a lot of clinical hours and not much shadowing, or is it acceptable to have, only shadowing in one particular field of medicine? Yeah, it's acceptable, and you'll get some traction at times at different medical schools and stuff. I'd say optimally, what you would want to do is get a variety of perspectives on what medicine is like, and you do that via clinical experience and through shadowing. And so optimally, you will start early enough in your process to make that happen, and to show to medical schools, I have a broad sense of what being in medicine is all about by virtue of these two things, clinical and shadowing. So, but however, what I would say is, as we know, we hear it from students a lot, getting shadowing experiences is difficult. Sometimes getting clinical experiences, depending on, your location, if you're in a rural area, it's going to be more difficult. If you're in an urban area, it's going to be a little bit easier perhaps. And so there's a lot of, issues related to all that. So I would say, Faison, is the answer to your question is, I don't think you need to necessarily have to have multiple specialties and stuff like that. Now, if everything in your file is all surgery, then, that could be a limitation. But, you get what you can get, and you do what you can do, and you make the effort, and that's what it's all about. From the way things sound, from your statement, from your question, I think MA is a great position. Cardiology clinic, that's great. You said you're going to have lots of hours by the time you apply, so that's good. So I don't see necessarily, based on what you said, a problem. So I don't think that, I think you need to have some shadowing, but if you can't get it in multiple specialties, you do what you can do. That's all you can do.
Yeah. All right. Keep them coming. Let me jump over to Instagram. I'm completing my BS this spring, but I messed up in college, so I brought down my GPA to 2.5. Now it's up to 3 after getting a 4 in university. Yeah. Okay. That was the follow-up to that 3.0 question. All right. Kamenev recently retook my MCAT 505 to 508. Scored higher in only one section. Cars 123 twice was my worst. And am a URS in California. URM, I'm assuming. How should I approach making a school list? Yeah. So premedyears.com/437 would be my go-to for how to build a school list. premedyears.com/437. I really need to redo that episode. But yeah, go check that out. That 123 may hinder you at some schools. But hopefully not. All right. Jason, I have a 513. There's another 123 here. 130, 123, 130, 130. Ouch.
Wow.
2.19 undergraduate GPA. Ouch. 4.0 one semester graduate school. Works full-time. SMP starting this summer. Is it reasonable to apply or to be able to apply for med school starting in 26 if I do well in SMP? How many credits is your SMP starting in this this summer? Scott, that's a big part of this equation, right? Is how many credits, how long is this upward trend, this kind of new evolution of Jason, the student?
Yeah, I'm wondering because he says, Jason, you say, is it reasonable to be able to apply for med school starting? So you want to start med school in 26 or are you going to apply in 26?
I think
That's a
apply
question.
in 26. Yeah.
Okay, if you're applying in 26.
Apply in 26.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. If you're applying this year during your SMP, that's not going to work.
Yep. Yeah. So apply.
And the 123 is going to be, that is a concern. I think there are going to be schools that are going to look at that and be, because I'm guessing that's in cars. So.
Yep, that is cars. Yeah, I always talk about Emory in this situation, right? Emory is very public, saying anything less than a 124 is considered non-competitive. So there are schools out there that will filter out based on that 123 subsection. Will it be all schools? No, but there will be some schools. So even with that said, I don't know if I'd retake a 513.
I know, right?
That's hard. Infinity or owl eyes. I originally, I mean, it does not look like owl eyes. I originally planned to apply this year, but I got sick quite often last year and recently, and eventually had to get a tonsillectomy. When I apply next year, should I explain how this held me back? Carlos, there's lots of reasons why students don't end up applying or take an extra gap year when they weren't originally planning on it. I mean, to me, unless there's a huge gap in the student's application, then there's probably nothing to say.
Right. And I think it's even what have you been doing through that gap, right? That really tells your story. If you really have nothing because you were really, really sick and you had to just stop all activity, that's very different than saying, well, I just didn't apply because I didn't have the time or I couldn't commit to it, yet I still remain engaged in building my application with other activities. Is going to be very important as you apply in the cycle. But I don't think specifically saying, well, I didn't apply last year because I had tonsillectomy and I just couldn't move on. The question comes, how long was that recovery? If it was 2 months, then what happened to the rest of the time? So that's why you just don't really put it on one thing. I would say you slow down and then you spread out the timeline of what you would usually have done in maybe a quicker amount of time over the course of a year, and then you're ready to apply now. But I wouldn't specifically say or call it out in any formal way.
All right. Ben, does doing well in undergrad while double majoring make you stand out any more than just one major? No. It's just classes, my friend. Just classes. Anjali, what about
applicable?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's also applicable to a minor. Med schools don't care what minor you had or whatever.
They don't care. Anjali, what about a GPA that has been increasing every year? It is different, but increasing. What about compared to what, Anjali? I'm not really sure what the question is. But a GPA that's increasing is exactly what you want. So,
Yeah.
Great job. Ethan's Tech. At my school, the Department of Zoology was replaced by the Department of Integrative Biology. So never mind. I was going to make a joke, but I'll stay away from it for fear of being canceled. I want to obtain. I want to obtain a letter of recommendation from a professor who taught my animal science class. Will that satisfy a science faculty letter? Yeah, it should.
Yep. Yep.
It should. For reference, zoology is classified under biology according to MCAT's course classification, but there's no mention of integrative biology specifically. That's because it's biology.
Yeah.
All right. Kind of the same question we had earlier. Is starting 5 of my 15 activities this year, applying in June, a red flag? Potentially.
Why wait? Why did you wait?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends probably on what they are as well.
Yeah.
So, yep. All right. Empress Judah, can you provide any non-traditional advisement or strategies for persons pursuing medical school for psychiatry? Is there a way to shadow in the field before re-entering school as a psychotherapist? I mean, we do a lot of advising for non-traditional students, and most students have an idea of what they want to do when they're going into medical school, or have kind of shown interest in something. Like if you're a baseball player and you grew up on a farm and you want to be an orthopod, then that's just kind of what you do. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure what your question is. If the question is, can we advise you? Yeah, we can advise you. Go over to medicalschoolhq.net. If you have a specific question, like, is there a way to shadow in the field? Yeah, go and find a psychiatrist to shadow. I think psychiatry is one of the harder fields to shadow. Just there's a lot of stigma and privacy around psychiatric patients, but it's possible. I know it's possible because my sister-in-law did it before she went to and became a PsyD by herself. So yeah, go check that out.
Interesting.
For DO programs, does a nutrition professor count as a letter of recommendation for a science professor? So all of these science professor letters, just go and look at what each application service classifies the letter as, or the course as, and that will kind of answer your question. Is it science or not? Alex, would a shadowing experience that was from 2.5 years ago be a red flag if there isn't a recent experience? I've started a clinical role that allows me to work with NP/PA, but not doctors. Well, even if you were working with doctors, it would be clinical and not shadowing. So not really sure what that point is. But Carlos, I often talk about consistency and recency as something that's important for me when I'm looking at an application. Now, again, there's 200 plus medical schools out there and 200 plus admissions committees and infinitely more admission committee members. So they may have a different view, although their view would be wrong if it's different than mine, but that's okay. The way that I explain this potential is that potentially, right? Potentially, this is viewed as like, all right, I always do this, like, okay, I'm done, right? I did my shadowing, check, I'm done. What next? And it doesn't show a true passion of, oh, I can't wait to get into this field. I'm really excited about being a doctor. I want to be around doctors and soak up all that I can and learn and do all this stuff. So to me, that's a concern.
Yeah, I think it is, and we have to get I think we encourage pre-meds to get out of this idea, and I do this in my one-on-one advising, is that the application to medical school is this checklist, right? Like, oh, I did this my sophomore year, I'm done with that. I did this my junior year, I'm done with that. Now I'm ready to apply. And we even talked about it. I talked about it today in a different call of you do not stop working on your application to medical school until you have that offer of admission, meaning that you don't give up experiences just because you're like, I felt like I'm done, right? If the
Yeah.
goal is to get into medicine and there's expectations from schools that you continue to build your experiences in the clinical, community service, research, whatever it is, you have to adapt and find the flexibility to be able to fit that in your schedule to at least chip away at it little by little versus I'm done. And then be like, oh, I feel like I need to come back because I need something more recent. And again, right, it showcases one, your adaptability to being able to handle multiple things, which is a plus in medical school. The flexibility that you have in like, I'm going to do this now. I might slow down on this experience, might pick up this, but it's always working towards your application to medical school if this is what you want to do. You do not stop working at it until you get an offer of admission. So this brings a little, it maybe a red flag, maybe not a red flag, but it's just brings up the question, why now? Why did you stop 2.5 years ago, and then why now?
Yeah. And even you mentioned, right, you don't stop until you have that acceptance. I would even add, like, and you still potentially don't stop because that acceptance is typically conditional that everything you say you're going to be doing, you're going to be doing. I had a parent reach out to me yesterday, 2 days ago, saying, hey, when can my kid take a break to rest up for med school starting? They have the acceptance, but now they want to be like, okay, I want to take a break before I start med school. I said, reach out to the school and just say, hey, like, I'm super excited about coming. I know I put on my application I was going to be working as an MA, but now that I have this acceptance, I would love to like take a vacation with my family or do something and just get permission from them to not really fulfill what you said you were going to do in your application.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some schools are real sticklers about that.
Yeah.
And I think also to just think about it, right? A break, a 1 week, couple days. But if you're like, I want to go away for a month and a half, that it just, the reality is not a lot of people have that flexibility. So you being able to say like, I want to step away for a month could be a concern.
Yep. Dylan, is scribing seen as glorified shadowing or true clinical experience, or depends on how you write about it? I would say it depends on the medical school, not how you write about it. I know there are some schools that don't really like shadowing as clinical experience, and that's just part of the deal, unfortunately. Yeah, shadowing as clinical experience. Scribing, shadowing. Scribing.
All of the above. It varies by program. Everybody sees it differently.
Yeah. Tutorial Kingdom. Can I break one activity into two if it's both leadership and community service? President of Community Service Club at the university. Scott, what do you think? One activity, two spots?
Yeah, as long as you don't double dip the hours. So you have to carve out how much of this experience was leadership and how much of this experience was community service. And you can't double dip the hours, but I have seen students effectively split it into two. If you have space, if you have a slot on AMCAS for that, you have enough slots, then you can do that. But you have to be careful and you have to write the narrative focused on that part of what you're doing, the leadership part of a community service part.
Yep. All right.
Can't copy and paste. Doesn't work.
No.
Although at TMDSAS, they basically tell you to do that. Oh, man. Aria, if I got a B in 2 quarters of OChem back to back, is that a problem for my application? What's a good GPA to aim for in general? Carlos, one class, one subject typically won't make or break an application. B's in classes. I think there's this fear that if you don't get A's in your prereqs, you're not going to get into medical school. What advice do you have for poor Aria here?
If it was a pattern, meaning that there was a consistency of like B, 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 C, B, 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 C, then there would be a cause of concern. But I think 2 B's and then everything else looks okay, then you're good to go.
What do you have against British television, man? The BBC.
I love British television. I wish we could get it here. There's some really good shows there.
It's called BritBox.
I know, but that's another service I have to pay for. I'm gonna go broke just paying to watch TV, which is interesting. But
we wanted to break up the cable companies, and now we're paying way more than we used to.
Yeah, but no cause of concern. Again, if it was a pattern, that's one thing. But if it's not, it just happens to be 2 quarters. You're good to go.
Yeah. Yes. 2 nickels, that would be a problem, but 2 quarters, you're all right.
Yeah, whatever. Oh my God.
Post Yoshi on Instagram. I'm working as a postdoctoral researcher in cancer clinical trial and preclinical cancer models as well. Would this be considered as clinical experience? Would scribing and shadowing be compulsory? Number one, I don't know what compulsory means. Using big words around me is not a good idea because I'm not super smart. So I would love a definition from anyone. Working as a postdoctoral research in cancer clinical trial and preclinical cancer models as well. Post-Yoshi, it all depends on what you're doing, right? If you're interacting with patients above and beyond, I think, consenting them, then potentially, then it could be clinical experience. So it's all going to depend on what you're doing. And I will Google compulsory, since apparently neither you two
required. It means required.
Obligatory. Yeah. I mean, shadowing, definitely. Shadowing is different than clinical experience. So you need shadowing. And then potentially some clinical experience, depending on what your role is.
Yeah. It's going to depend what the content of the experience is, to your point.
Yep. Ramya asks, how do we find out which schools do not consider scribing as clinical? You don't. I mean, we could email all 200 plus. But yeah. Dr. Gray, if I had a 3.64 undergrad GPA and a 3.43 science GPA, but I had a 3.64 SMP GPA, a 1-year program, will med schools see that as being too similar to my undergrad GPA and not really look upon me favorably? Oh man. Scott, 3.64 SMP GPA, depending on the SMP, right? At 3.64, if this is first year med school classes, that's pretty darn good.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So I think it's just going to depend on maybe the reputation of the SMP program. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, as with most of these questions, MS, what I would say about this is, what's the alternative? You're saying, is this going to be too similar to my undergrad and not really look favorably upon me? So what's the alternative here? You just don't apply? I mean, that's not an alternative. So you apply with what you've got. You've done an SMP. That's great. You have a good GPA in your SMP, and and so then you go forward with it. You don't tell us what your MCAT score is, but I don't know what the alternative is. Even if they don't look upon you favorably, you've done what you can do, and that's great. And so go, I would say move forward with it and apply. And so,
yeah, go for it. You can do it. Ilya, for a reapplicant, if I only have one new activity, that's just a funny word, only. One new activity, it's clinical volunteering. Is it okay to submit a similar application, or do I have to have more than just one activity to not look stagnant? Carlos, we often get the question, is being a reapplicant bad? And my go-to response is being a reapplicant with the same bad application is bad. Ilya hasn't told us why her application may not be up to par. Ilya is just saying, hey, I have one new activity. Maybe the activities weren't the problem. We don't really know.
Yeah.
What's your feedback for this?
I mean, I think that, and also it almost goes back to that checklist mentality, right? Like, I have all of these, I'm now going to add one more as a reapplicant versus really assessing your entire application. And so is it going to make you look stagnant? I mean, you're going to have a new activity, but think about other activities as well that maybe are missing in your application to really determine, is it going to add value? Is it going to make me look different? And of course, everything else within the application. But get away from the checklist mentality of like, I'm going to add one more and I'm going to hope for the best. It just doesn't turn out well.
Yep. All right. Good luck. If I could find my mouse, that would be wonderful. Where the heck is my mouse?
He's eating cheese. He's eating cheese.
I love the TikTok videos where it's usually the spouse. When a spouse is like, I have a mouse, and they have like a trash can on the ground and they're like shaking it. They're like, I caught a mouse. And the other spouse comes running over and tries to get it and then releases it on the porch. And it's like a computer mouse.
Yeah.
Got a mouse. Lead in. Would it be a red flag if I have a total of 6 gap years between high school and college? I was an MA in Vietnam for 5 years, then moved to the US and lived in California for 1 year, then started college. Nobody cares about high school to college. It's not part of your application, my friend. So
that's right.
Go for it.
Yeah,
that's
go
awesome.
for it.
Although all those years as an MA in Vietnam would go on your application because that's post high school. So
yeah,
it's a lot of experience.
Yeah, go for it.
Michelle, Ruiz. How do AdComs look at a letter packet from a school? Includes a cover letter introducing the student, lists letters, discusses school's academic rigor, opportunities, resources versus a committee letter. Scott, this is one of those what's the alternative questions, right? If your school provides a letter packet, then they provide a letter packet. Doesn't matter what the comparison is to a committee letter.
That's right. That's right. And I would say do what your school asks you to do. Get the letter packet and don't worry about it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm trying to advocate for all of those processes to just go away. Just submit individual letters and let's get it over with. Cookies in my nose. Should probably have better aim. If you are waiting on a response from interviews, is it a good time to send letters of intent or interest? Carlos, it's that time of year where we're in the waiting game purgatory. When should students be trying to communicate with schools?
It's going to depend and vary. The first thing that comes to mind is, does the school even want your letter? Because some schools are very strict and have policies of like, we don't accept updates letters of any form. If you feel that it's going to make a difference in the process, and you want to spend the time and the effort to craft a letter, I would say you can send it, again, with the idea that they accept it. And again, it's up to you, right? Whether you think it's going to make it or break it. Send them. I would try to send them sooner rather than later, just because then the process is going to end, and then you're going to be like, oh, I wish I would have sent the letter. So,
if they accept them, one letter of intent to the school that you are saying you'll go to, and then update letters to everyone else. Over on Instagram, our committee letters, going back to our committee letter packet discussion, are committee letters better than individual letters in the eyes of admissions? Scott, I don't think they can have, right? Admissions committees can't have this is better than, because not every student has access to committee letters. So they can't in the eye of a rubric, let's say, they can't give more weight to students with committee letters because that would be completely unfair to students,
Yeah.
which I think it's the majority of students don't have access to committee letters.
Right. Right. Now, what I would say, I agree with that. And what I would say, however, is if your school has a committee letter and you're eligible to go through that process, I would encourage you to do that.
Yep.
Just because the medical schools, especially those that are real familiar with your undergraduate institution, they may question, if you don't have
Yep.
a committee letter, why didn't you give a committee letter? What's that all about? Whether that's right or wrong or appropriate is a whole other topic. But it is the reality. If you're applying from a school that has a committee letter and you can do it, do it. That's the message I would say.
Yep. Yeah, don't take my advice of I want all committee letters to be abolished for you to then go, well, Dr. Gray says I shouldn't get a committee letter. I know you have one at my school, but I'm not going to get one because Dr. Gray said they're terrible.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. I will also say, if your committee letter offers them and they are not offering you one for a specific reason because you don't meet specific GPA or MCAT cutoffs or you didn't jump through enough hoops, don't sweat it. Have a response to why you don't have one. If you get asked that, just move on. And that's mostly why I hate committee letters, but there are lots of reasons. All right. Rishi, 2.7 GPA, 514 MCAT, plan to do an SMP. Why do you have an MCAT score already? Planning to apply to 8 programs. If I don't get into an SMP, should I consider the Caribbean? MCAT has given me confidence I am capable. Carlos, Dr. Wright, right next to your side there, often talks about the MCAT and GPA being 2 different variables. One variable that says how well can you do over a long period of time, the GPA, and the other variable, how well can you do on a really big test, the MCAT. Med school has both as part of the process. You're still typically getting grades or at least pass fail in a lot of schools. So you're still doing all of the super long longitudinal courses, and you have the big exams as well. For someone who hasn't really proven yet, potentially GPA wise, is the Caribbean a good escape route for them?
I mean, I think personally you would believe that it is because it's easy to get in, right? And your goal is to become a physician.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, the curriculum is probably going to be the same, very rigorous, and you have to be ready for it. You have to get board certified. So there's going to be exams throughout this to assess your knowledge and push through what you need to get to the other end. So I don't want applicants to think that the Caribbean option is the easy way out because it's the same, right? The same curriculum, meaning like you're going to have to put the effort in. It might be, you might think that it's easier to get into. But at the end of the day, you have to demonstrate that even with that GPA that you're capable of going through the rigor of medical school. And how do you do that? So.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, Caribbean's harder. It's not easier. It's harder. All right.
Nice weather.
When there's not hurricanes.
Right.
KM Lath 22. What's your best advice for MMI interview prep? Had several successful interviews, but just got the first MMI. Interviews are still being handed out, which is crazy. It's so late. Scott, MMI, what's your go-to advice for MMI prep?
I think you want to be prepared for scenarios, ethical scenarios, life type scenarios. I think you want to be, you want to practice the timing of the MMI. They will let you know at the school how long you have to read the prompt and develop an answer, and then how long you have in each station. So get the timing down so that you understand kind of what that's going to feel like, stuff like that. And I think a really important quality of MMI preparation is to get out of the mode of thinking you got to have the right answer. It's not about the right answer. It's about the process that you're going through to develop a position about whatever the prompt says. It's very similar to Casper in that regard, where it's not about the right or wrong answer. It's really about how you're talking about it and the tools that you're using to bring to bear on developing a cogent answer to whatever the scenario is. And so I would say those are, practicing, you can find lists, all these kinds of lists online and stuff of potential MMI questions, and just practice through those some and get a good sense of, we do a lot of that here at medical school headquarters, a lot of MCAT, or not MCAT, of interview prep. And that's what we do is, we're practicing these questions. How is this response? Is it sound? Is it on topic? Is it, does it follow? Is it logical? And, things like that.
Yep. Yeah. My biggest advice is treat it like real life, right? It may be some super hyperbolic scenario, but just think through it. It's a fun thought experiment. Think through it. What would you do? Don't worry about right or wrong. Don't worry about like, oh, I know the medical ethics behind this one. Just talk through it. Lucas, how do you best answer secondary questions that talk about what qualities you can bring to their school? What is your general approach to this? A fun kind of diversity type question, right? Is like, what are you bringing to us? Carlos, a lot of students struggle with this because they look at their application and they think, I'm not special. I've done all of the normal clinical experience, the shadowing, the volunteering. I don't come from a disadvantaged background, or I'm not a minority or something like that. And they're like, I don't know how to answer this question, whether it's this type of question or a straight up diversity question. How do you get students to think through how to respond to this when they don't think there's anything special about them?
Yeah. I think it's really focusing and doing some soul searching of the qualities and abilities that you bring to the table as an individual and that you can bring to the classroom. I caution that by saying make sure that you do it in a humble way without it coming off as if you're bragging or you're better than everybody else that's going through this process, because then it loses the essence, right? Like, what qualities do you bring? Oh, I'm humble, but then you're doing it in a bragging way. So I would say it involves reflection, looking inward and saying, like, I exude this quality. How does it present itself? What value does it bring to the institution? What value does it bring to my classmates, the profession? Again, without making it seem like you're the only one that has this quality, right? Or that you're the better than everybody else that exudes this quality. So you do it in a way that it's reflective, and you do it humbly, and then you answer the question. But it does involve reflection. And I think some folks do struggle with reflection a little bit because they think they want you to list all these things and why you're great, but it comes from the point of presenting yourself with these abilities and qualities from a very humble and inward perspective.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I think we'll end there. We're kind of at time. Time flies when you're having fun at Premed office hours. We are here every week at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm debating if we should switch times, maybe to a later time, if that would be better for students. For you students that are here, we see a lot of you week in and week out. I don't know. What do you think? A couple hours later, would that be better? Maybe. I don't know.
The lunch hour. I like the lunch hour.
Lunch hour, yeah.
Because you can eat and listen and type. I don't know. I'm not.
It's not fair to me. I can't eat. The medical
Let me
school.
answer your question.
Nom, nom, nom. I might end up with cookies in my nose.
You get a special lunch hour much later. How about that?
Oh man. Medicalschoolhq.net. Check out all of our awesome resources, lots of which are free, one-on-one advising available as well. If you want some great advice for you on your journey to medical school. Carlos, Scott, thank you for joining us today. Everyone else, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.